Welcome to PLASTA UK.
Right. For this PodPlast UK episode, we're going to be discussing getting a number in plastic surgery. And this is aimed at someone who has perhaps not got a number in the last round, or someone who has not yet applied and considering applying for a number next year. So I have the great pleasure of having Susan McCrossan and our very own Matt Stone. Susie is a number trainee in Ireland, and Matt is a number trainee in the UK. Susie has also been a UK trainee in the past. And Susie, when she applied for her number, initially, Susie didn't get it on the first try, but on the second try, she not only got a number in Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, but she also got a UK number. And being the turncoat that she is, she decided to go to Ireland. and Matt got his number on his first attempt. So different perspectives. And I think it'd be great to hear how they prepared, how they managed dealing with not failure, but not, well, deferring the success of getting a number. And these things are important perspectives. And I will then throw in bits of what my views are from a trainer's perspective for someone who interviews. Right. So Susie and Matt, up to you. Crack on. Tell us how to prepare.
Wow.
I think
that's a
well,
big
if I can
ask.
start, Susie. Sorry. Do you want to go first, Susie? Sorry.
You go first.
Obviously, the first thing you've got to think about is your portfolio. And this is something that has changed a little bit since I first applied. So I was one of the first years applying after COVID, and the system that was put in around then, where you upload all your evidence, is effectively still the system we're using now, albeit with some tweaks. I think the first thing that you really have to understand about the portfolio is it takes a lot of time. This is not something to wait and leave until, a month or 2 months before your application has to be in. It's really something to think about as soon as you start thinking that this is something you're aiming for. Start getting your evidence in order. It's hard, and it's hard to make sure that you're ticking all of those boxes to make sure you're giving yourself the best chance and presenting the best version of you. So as soon as you can, and I would suggest that's ideally from when you're a core trainee really, start putting things together. And to do that, you need to first of all find out what it is they're looking for. Now, obviously that changes a little bit from year to year, but the previous year schemes are all out there, so they give you a fairly good idea, and obviously it may change a little bit, but it'll give you a broad idea of what they are looking for. So I think that's a really useful place to start. And what I did, and what I think is quite helpful, is to start by benchmarking yourself against that. It's fair to say that there are definitely easier ways to get points and harder ways to get points. So yeah, it's still the case that you get points for doing things like a PhD or a dental degree, but that's a hell of a commitment just to get a relatively small number of points. So if you've already done those things, great. I wouldn't really recommend doing them to get points. Having said that, you really do want to be looking at making sure you're maximising the points for things like research, for audit, and also making sure that you've got all the evidence you need to support your clinical skills. That really is something that you do need to start early.
Yeah, so I agree. You have to, as soon as you make the decision that you're wanting to go for plastic surgery, higher surgical training, you need to really start building your portfolio, because this is a marathon, the portfolio, it's not a sprint. And with that, you have to look at each section, and you have to play the game a little bit. Everybody else out there is playing the game, and you have to do the same. So yes, you might want to do one project that's absolutely amazing, but if it only leads to one publication or one presentation, then the person who's done other things, 5 projects that maybe aren't as hard hitting as that one project, but they've got 5 presentations and 5 posters and have used those all over, they are unfortunately going to hit a few more marks. So it's about seeing that and recognizing that, and preparing your portfolio towards what is going to maximize your points, because unfortunately that is the system, and that is the way everybody else is thinking, and the people who are really clued in will be acting. In regards to your clinical aspect of the portfolio, you need to be, again, putting in the hours, because there's no point having something that says you can do a spaghetti wrist, but if you can't actually do a spaghetti wrist, then you shouldn't really be claiming for that. So you need to make sure that you're putting in your hours, that clinically you are the best that you can be and get the recognition for that. So if you don't already use ISCP, it would be really great to download ISCP and use that to get your work-based assessments. So your work-based assessments and get your levels. So level 3 and level 4 is what you're looking for in certain things. Excision of a skin cancer and reconstruction. You want to be getting levels 3 and 4s, which essentially means that you can do these independently, because that's what they're looking for as part of the portfolio. So you have to start building that. And again, that doesn't come in 1 month or 2 months. That does come over a year or 2 or even more. And you need to build, and every single thing you do, try to get recognition for it. Don't just think, oh, I'll put that in a month's time. No, just make it happen. And then you can make it good later. Okay. And that's the way I looked at it, because you have to just start building everything. It is unfortunately very competitive, and everybody else will be doing exactly the same, if not better. So you just have to keep going.
I think that's the really key thing, Susie. I mean, I think every year when it comes around to it, I get people, often a couple of weeks before, or sometimes less, sometimes even days before, saying, oh, I need an assessment for this or that. And obviously you want to try and help people if it's all reasonable, but equally you're putting people under pressure, you're putting yourself in a really stressful situation. So I think you want to try and avoid that and be organised if at all possible. Really, at that point, you want to have been able to park your portfolio and forget about it. You want to be happy with it, and you want to be moving on to thinking about the actual interview itself. And that only works if you start and you plan this effectively. And as I say, you really do have to be quite organised to be able to do that. But as Susie said, it's not just, obviously they say what they're looking for, and my understanding at the moment is they're still looking for 3 WBAs for each of those clinical levels that you're presenting. But it's more than that, obviously. You can't just do 3 flexor tendons and that's all you need. You need to be able to be a competent, and so that does take more time, and you've got to start targeting those things earlier, as well as obviously your general training.
What I would add to that, I completely agree with what both of you said. From my point of view, as someone who's involved, has been involved in the interview process, and we're looking at a portfolio initially, is evidence. You got to show evidence. You can't put stuff into your portfolio without evidence, and you need to get in the habit of, as Susie said, getting recognition. Is you need to get evidence which is uploaded on. So if you've presented at a meeting, you need to either get a letter stating that you presented, or you need to get a copy of the program to say that your name is on it. If you have papers, you need to put all the documentation for that. So that's important. Now, when people are looking through the portfolio who are going to interview, it's important to realize that people are looking through lots and lots and lots, hundreds of portfolios. And the easier it is to find the evidence and find all the things, the more likely you get high points for. Okay, there isn't a point for organization, but when they're looking through a portfolio, if it's disorganized, they're less likely subliminally to give you that extra bit of a point. So remember that. Organize it properly, get advice from people who have been successful. Say, can you look at this? Tell me it's been organized. And all of this has to be done in the fullness of time. You can't rush it. You need to be honest about what you can and cannot do and have or have not achieved, but at the same time, don't undersell. It is well documented that women tend to undersell and men tend to oversell. Obviously, this is not for every woman and every man, but you want to be honest, but don't undersell and don't oversell. That's the message there. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about the clinical part of the portfolio. And virtually every trainee I have met will come and get all kerfuffled about, I have to go and get so many extensors and so many burns, this and that and the other. The clinical part is only one part of your portfolio, and do not concentrate on that and not on the others. You have to give importance to all parts of your portfolio, and there are easy marks to be accrued in other things, audit, presentations, letters, all of that sort of thing. So look at the entire thing. The final thing is about uploading the portfolio. Please upload the portfolio not on the last day, because zillions of people are trying to do it on the same day. And if the system crashes, you are completely up the creek without a paddle. All right. So make sure do it 2 or 3 days in advance. Do you guys agree with that?
I totally agree. We have loads of people emailing PLASTA stressing about certain forms getting uploaded wrongly, or the system emailing them to say that they haven't filled things out correctly. So you don't want that to be on the last day. You want to have it all submitted so that you can then focus on the next bit and know that you have applied everything properly. And just to note, I would just flag that we host a webinar every year with the SAC leads who run national selection, just go over how to apply in regards to the actual application process and which forms are suitable and things like that. We try to hold this annually to make sure it eases anybody's fears about applying. So it's really important to log on to. However, there are some forms that have the name, for example, crest and creshed form. So just be really certain that you have the exact right form, because that was something that was flagged this year, is that some people were submitting a crest form instead of a CHRES form. There's differences, and just be 100% clear and sure of what you're submitting, because you don't want to be in a panic station if it's the wrong form.
So just to clarify, when Susie, you say we, you don't mean PodPlast UK. You mean Susie with her hat on as Madam President, Her Grace, the President of PLASTA. So she means it's PLASTA who's doing it.
Sorry, that's us as PLASTA. We do like to make sure the interviews and the application process runs smoothly from a trainee side of view. So we do host this in conjunction with the SAC to make sure that trainees have the most amount of knowledge in applying and that there's less stress. PLASTA host a webinar yearly, so it is free to sign up. Please sign up if you are applying, because we do host things that can help in regards to the application.
I think it's really important as well just to keep things in context. So obviously your portfolio is really important, and that's going to be key in determining whether you're going to get an interview or not. But people get very, very stressed about this. And certainly once you've got to the point of actually putting your application in, you want your portfolio to be done, and that's only one part of your assessment. If you get an interview, historically the portfolio then only accounts for about 25% of your overall score. So obviously you want to put forward the best version of yourself to give yourself the best chance of getting an interview, but you've got to be honest. And once you've actually got an interview itself, the interview is worth far more as a total of your mark.
Wonderful. That's the segue. Well done, Matt, for segueing us into the stage where the trainee has got an interview. How did you guys prepare for your interviews then? Matt, you start off.
I think my approach towards the interview was, and I'm not saying this is the only way or necessarily the right way, but certainly what I find helpful was to really treat it like an exam. So I began by looking at all the documents, and there's lots of documents out there. PLASTA have things, but there's lots of official documents as well on the application website. And that tells you in essence what they're looking for in the different stations. The current format, and it's been the format for a very long time, is you've got the 3 stations, clinical station with a couple of scenarios, as well as a communication station where you're calling the boss, and a consent station for a procedure with a patient. And then you have a structured interview, which is really looking at things like research, audit, clinical governance, and all those other related topics. So I started by going through that and really starting to think, what are the things you do really need to know about? The key thing to remember as well is what they're really looking for is the level of a safe new SD3. So there may be some elements of knowledge that you need to refresh or update, and things that you do need to gain. But actually, often it's not predominantly about the knowledge, it's about how you present yourself. Most people who've done a reasonable amount of plastics will have a lot of the baseline knowledge. So absolutely go and work out where the gaps are. But actually a lot of this is about technique and about how you present yourself. A lot of what they're assessing is your communication and your approach to these things. They want to see that you're safe and logical fundamentally. But all of this is still something that does take time. It's not quick, and you do need to spend a few months on this really. You don't want to be doing this in the weeks before. So the way I did it, and I think this is what a lot of people do, was I found a friend who was at the same level, who was also preparing for the interviews. And once we both kind of felt we were at a level where we were ready to start practicing, we'd sit down and start by essentially interviewing each other and practicing. And that's a really useful thing, I think, to try and work out where some of the gaps are as well in your knowledge, as well as some of the fundamental weaknesses in your techniques and approaches. And if you identify those early, you've got a lot of time to work on those. That's pretty much the approach most people take, but there are limits with that. So getting practice with different people is really helpful. And it's really essential, I think, to try and get some experience practicing with more senior people, which predominantly is going to be a mixture of registrars and consultants, obviously. Getting a range of different opinions within that is also really helpful. Generally, registrars probably have more time, and there may be more opportunities when you're on call in little periods in between where you can often do little bits as well. Consultants often have a lot of things going on, but in my experience, the vast majority of consultants, provided you give them enough notice, are very, very helpful and want to help people with this sort of thing. So approach people early, but most people really do want to help you as well. You have to remember that different people will come from different perspectives. So consultants will often have views on certain things, and some of them have experience of interviewing, and that is really invaluable. Equally, some of the younger registrars, particularly who are a bit closer to having done their own interviews, can be really useful because they still remember the sorts of things that they had to do when they were preparing as well. So that can equally be helpful. But obviously your interviewers are going to be consultants, so practice with consultants is invaluable, particularly if they have experience of interviewing for this or other things. Obviously there's a limited amount of time that consultants can devote to this. They're generally very busy individuals, and so it's helpful to get them involved, particularly later on in your preparation, but actually trying to get some involvement early on can be helpful, because the last thing you want to be doing is reinforcing bad habits or picking up problems really when it's very late and very difficult to deal with them. So I was practicing with consultants from at least 6 weeks before. And the other thing to say is obviously at the moment the interviews, they're still online. That's probably the way things are going to stay for the foreseeable, but obviously it may change. Having a range of practice both online and face-to-face is really good. The advantage of online is there's lots of flexibility in when you can do it. And obviously there are some peculiarities to do with interviewing online and how you come across that you do need to get that practice, because it is very different in a face-to-face scenario.
I'll just say very quickly, it's important that trainees realize that all consultants are very amenable to being bribed by a cup of coffee. Okay. And actually, the fact that the interviews are online now makes it easier to arrange rather than having to be there face to face. So just to say that, Susie, how did you prepare for your interview?
So I completely agree with Matt. This is an exam situation. You need to prepare like an exam. So for me, again, getting a study buddy is key. You want someone equally motivated towards the interviews that also know how the interviews work, so that you can have that person that you're accountable to and that you're accountable to each other. So we tried to go on for at least an hour most nights online on Zoom to match the way that it is done in real life, which is virtually. Every night we try to do at least an hour of just back and forth. Now that's at the point that you've already practiced your answers and have a set answer for most standard questions. You want your chest reconstruction answer, you want your skin answer, you want your how to consent to Dupuytren's. You want all that at that stage to be something that you've practiced and you know how to do in the time frame, because it is really quick. You only have 5 minutes or so to get these answers out. So you want to make sure that you've thought about what do you need to know and how are you going to phrase it. Obviously, with me being from Belfast, the way I phrase things is slightly different. So I needed to make sure that I was going to be coming across in a certain way.
I never noticed that you phrase things differently. Never, ever, ever noticed that.
But you have to make sure you don't sound inappropriate or too chill or too relaxed. So having that honest feedback from each other is really key. So before we got to that stage, we had prepared in our own study time individually answers to each of these. So, your consent section. What are the important things to hit when you're consenting a breast reduction compared to when you're doing a Dupuytren's? You want to make sure you've got all that written down as part of your library revision sessions by yourself. And then you want to be practicing. This is like you're going up to bat at the match. You want to be practicing so that you're slick, that you're in time, and that you're in control. And then you can then go into that mock exam mode where you're batting off each other each night for an hour online, and then also using that time with consultants. So when I was going through this, I was with Mr. Majumder, which was fantastic, because then that allowed me to have, again, a senior clinician's perspective on my answers, the way I'm phrasing things, the way I'm coming across, and giving me real life feedback of, no, you sounded bad, or actually, yeah, I like the way you said that. That sounded really good, or, your content is good or bad.
Let's get this out there. Susie bullied me into creating a course because she said, and I am not exaggerating, she pointed a finger at me and said, I need to get a number. I need you to create a course that I can practice. Susie, is that not right?
That is right. And I'll tell you why. Everybody goes to courses. Unfortunately, that's the real life situation of the world we're in. Having these dedicated courses for ST3 interviews, and I'm not promoting one over the other or anything like that, but they are really, really good. None of these are usually for profit. There will be one or two that are for profit, but the rest are hardworking consultants that are giving up their Saturday or their day to come and help you guys get across the line. And therefore, Mr. Majumder, with his course, it was fantastic. You know, we are able to go in and do mock scenarios, mock exams, you know, have a bit of chat in the morning about how, you know, but by that stage, you already know what way the interviews are going. Quick chat about that, and then going straight into having a dedicated day of being, you know, on the spot, being a bit scared, having the adrenaline flowing, and then having bosses who have been through all of this sit down and quiz you and go through the interview process, so that the first time you're sitting that interview process is not on your actual interview day. You want that, and unfortunately that is best delivered via courses, in my personal opinion. There are numerous courses, they usually sell out really fast. So get on the wait list, keep online on X or Instagram or on our PLASTA newsletter to find out what courses are available, because most people have done one or two of these courses. I personally love them myself. I thought they were really great practice and did give you the fear, but you kind of need a little bit of fear in my mindset anyway. That's my thoughts.
My point, even though Susie bullied me into running a course, which we now run, and it's always oversubscribed. But as you said, there are multiple courses. My perspective, however, on this is don't go and waste lots and lots of money doing all the courses. Some people benefit from the courses, obviously. Some people may not benefit from the courses. Matt, what's your view on courses? What, you know, did you use them?
So I didn't personally do any courses, but that just wasn't how I prepared. But I have since been involved with courses, including your own, Mr. Majumder. There is definitely a role for them, and I think they can be really helpful. I would totally agree with what you were saying. I don't think they're a substitute for putting in the hard work yourself. They can be useful. If you're going to do them, do one, maybe do two. Ideally, I think do them when you've been preparing for a little while so you can try and get the most out of them. But equally, again, you don't want to be doing them last minute. You know, you need to be having enough time so that if you are learning things from these courses, and that really is the idea, that you've got time to try and address those things. And certainly doing lots and lots of courses probably isn't helpful and is probably going to get quite expensive. So that's not something I would particularly recommend. From my point of view, there's a couple of real things that courses can provide that can be useful. One of them is feeling the fear, if you will. Getting interview practice in a very realistic situation is really helpful. Courses often will allow you to get interview practice with quite a large panel of different people and getting that panel of different opinions. Interviewers possibly aren't all going to agree in their perspectives, and that's fine. But if you're getting the same feedback and the same messages, that can be really, really helpful. Getting those different opinions is also really useful. Outside of courses, that different opinions thing is also really important. Fortunately, when I was preparing, I worked in a unit where there were lots of very supportive consultants, many of whom were happy to help by doing some interview practice. It's really important to work with a variety of consultants, so don't just practice with the consultants where you feel kind of safe. It's obviously good to get a bit of practice with those people as well, but actually getting some practice perhaps with the consultants who you may find slightly more intimidating or who may push you more in an interview scenario can actually be really helpful. Okay.
Sorry, was I the intimidating or the supportive one? Let's hear this on air now.
You could be either, Mr. Majumder.
A smiling assassin.
But you know what I mean. You don't just want to do practice interviews with people who are doves, those people that are always nice to you during the practice sessions. Because it's important to remember that the point of the interviews is to really try and bring out the best in the people interviewing. They're not there to try and trick you. Interviewers are not there to be nasty, but there's always going to be some interviewers who are perhaps slightly more sharks. And having practice with those kind of interviewers and being able to deal with them so that you don't panic and that you've sort of, again, felt the fear, if you will, beforehand can be really useful. As Susie said, it's important because on the day you will feel it. And actually, if you felt that beforehand, often I think you can better manage that stress.
So let me tell you now the perspective of the interviewer. So, you know, the interviewers are prepped before, and it's always two sides of the table, isn't it? So the first thing is to take away the interpersonal issues. You know, I don't like this candidate, or I really like this candidate, even though neither of them have opened their mouth. To get rid of that from it. There are multiple people interviewing, and often when you're being interviewed at one station, one person or two people may be asking, there may be 3, 4, or even more people. There's also a lay interviewer who moves from station to station to ensure that it's a fair interview process. There is obviously an appeal process if you think you have been given marks that are not high enough. So don't go in there thinking, I will get in trouble because they don't like me because I'm brown or because I'm a woman or because I have glasses or have green hair. None of that actually happens anymore. There are too many checks and balances. So that's important to remember. The other thing, and you guys talked about fear, I prefer to use it in stress, as you know, because it's natural human reaction to be stressed at an interview or an exam. And an interview and exam, we react the very same way. And exactly what you guys have said, if people practice, what they learn to do is essentially harness that stress. It is essentially the plastic surgery principle of conditioning, isn't it? We condition ourselves, that we condition a flap to be able to function in stress. The flap functions better in a hypoxic stress because we've conditioned it. We condition ourselves for just general stress. And it is the practice, sometimes in a stressful environment, to be able to do that. The other thing I want to talk about is the luggage. That people have luggage because they haven't done well at one station and then they take that to the next station. If you mull that over in your second station, you may not succeed in a second station because you're still stuck on the first. Similarly, if you've done very well, don't let that make you get cocky. So do a station, forget about it, do the next one. At the end of the day, to then do your post-mortem, usually with something nice in your hand. I prefer red wine. People may have their own preferences. Now, I want to use that as a segue, the luggage segue. The other big luggage is when people haven't necessarily been successful the first time. Now, from my point of view, not being successful is not failing. It means in a competition, you perhaps have not scored high enough to get a number. Susie, you were in that situation, weren't you? Because in your first time you applied, you didn't get, I hope you don't mind me telling people about it. It is what it is. But you then went on to the second. How did you deal with that? How did you deal with the disappointment and then get back onto the horse, as they say?
Yeah, so I had dedicated all of my medical school and post-medical school years to trying to go on to plastic surgery. I've always wanted to do plastic surgery. So for me, not even getting an interview was really, really upsetting personally, because I had never failed an exam. I had always got on to everything I needed to get on to. And for me, this is my first time of feeling utter disappointment. So it took me a few weeks to pick myself up, pull up my big girl pants and really analyze what stopped me from getting an interview. I thought my CV was excellent. I thought my portfolio was great. And I think just having that recognition then and that introspective view with my supportive consultants at the time going through, right, what do we need to do to get you it? How do we need to play the game better? I had my clinical stuff. I had publications, presentations, things like that, but I just needed more. I needed to be better and I needed to play the game slightly better as well. So with that, and just allowing myself to be upset and annoyed for a few weeks was key, because then picked myself together and did what I needed to do. And then the next year I ended up with both a number in Ireland and in the UK, which was something that, I was really proud of, because I'd finally achieved what I had been trying to achieve for years and working towards for years. And I love plastics and it's an absolute privilege to be in the jobs that we are in. So yeah, I think, look, we all take setbacks at times. That was my setback. You just need to allow yourself in the moment to be upset, but then work out what can we do from here. Always keep moving forward. Just keep swimming and have that support from your colleagues and your bosses to try and support you to get to where you need to be is really key. And for me, being such a competitive person, I was almost embarrassed as well that I had to then announce that I didn't even get an interview, but it is what it is. And I'm here now and it's all good.
Exactly. I think we are all very A1 personalities because that's what we are as surgeons. And we are all very bright individuals. It is what it is. My big setback was when I failed what was called the FRCS in those days, what is called the MRCS right now. I failed the MRCS part 1 because I had never really studied that hard for an exam and I passed all of them. And then I thought this was going to be, a piece of piss, and it wasn't. I got a "you have not passed," and it's a big slap in the face. But these are not failures. I think this is life teaching you a lesson, and I think we are better for it. Now, the other thing is we discussed about preparing for stress, the stress of the interviews and so on. But on the day that you go, other than just having practice, any sort of pre-game things that you guys do to say, yeah, I am here now. It's me on my lonesome against these men and women who are going to be interviewing me. What was your pre-game things, Matt? What did you do to say, yeah, did you breathe? Did you take a sip of water? What did you do?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I think we all have these little things, don't we? And I don't have so much of a routine myself, but simple things, getting yourself ready before. So I remember when I was at university, one of my housemates, before every single exam, he used to put on his suit, because we had to wear suits for our exams, and then he would belt out the theme tune from Mulan while he sang along. Slightly eccentric, you might say, but it was just part of his routine. It helped to get him in his mindset. Sometimes these little things, if you have them, they can be helpful. It's almost like putting on your battle armor, isn't it? So that you feel ready. There are simple things that anyone can really do like that. You don't want to be stressing about the little fine details at the last minute. Knowing what you're going to wear, having all that ready and picked out so that you're not stressing about things, making sure you need to prepare your space and that you've got everything that you need. All of those things, they're last minute stresses. You don't want to be worrying about them. You want to be just focusing on being able to present the best version of yourself. I think different people will approach things differently. Personally, my opinion is revising, finishing preparations, doing more practice on the morning of the interviews or even late the night before is probably not helpful. If you've been putting the time in beforehand, you just have to call it at some point. My suggestion would be call it quite early, probably in the day before, and do something to relax yourself. Try and enjoy yourself. I think I went to the cinema the afternoon before because honestly, if you don't know it by then, you're probably not going to know it. And it's probably not going to make a difference, but it probably is just going to add to your stress. Equally, I think that's certainly something that people find helpful, but likewise afterwards. Once it's done, personally, I don't think it's helpful to be sitting trying to micro dissect every single thing that's happened. So plan something nice and go and do that. Go for a run, go to the gym, go watch a film, whatever you find helpful. Once it's done, park it. There may be lessons to learn from it, depending on how it's gone, but in that immediate moment, it's not helpful in my opinion.
I think if you're going to micro dissect, do it over a good meal and a nice glass of something. And always remember, whether it's your interviews or your exams, your families have gone through it as well. You've taken time away from them. You've been a bit short with them, whatever. So you've got to make sure that is family time. I completely endorse that. Susie, what's your pre-game thing then? Are you a Superman pose or what do you do? Do you listen to some music?
So, as you know, I love a bit of caffeine. So I
A
always
bit. Oh my God.
So I do like to indulge in a little Red Bull. And I also like to play a little bit of like.
Sorry, before you say what you like to play, viewers, please do not try this at home. This lady is a trained individual at drinking Red Bull.
I like to play a little bit of gangster rap mixed in with a little bit of like Eye of the Tiger to really pump myself up. And then just think about all of the amazing women out there that have done things before and think to myself, if they can do it, why can't I? So
absolutely,
I just sort of go down that route. But yeah, being on time, making sure that you've done everything that you can do. So that is months of preparation in advance so that you're not sat there the day going, oh, I wish I'd done this or that. You need to have done that preparation. And as Matt and I are now sitting our FRCS exams, we're in this sort of similar stage now of going through all of this type of thing again. And it's the months in preparation that make the day go a lot smoother for you. So yeah, making sure you're not hungry, angry, late or tired are the key. So that HALT, I really do believe in that HALT mnemonic, making sure that you're not hungry, you're not angry, you haven't fallen out with your partner or your family beforehand. You've got up, you're not late and you're not tired. So make sure you avoid all of those 4 things and you should be off to a smooth thing. But yeah, pumping yourself up, definitely key.
Fantastic. My advice is, as you guys have heard, is box breathing is terribly important. The Marines do it before they, for instance, break down some door not knowing what might be on the other side. And the box breathing is 4 seconds of inhalation, 4 seconds of hold, 4 seconds of exhalation, 4 seconds of hold, and do it for 2 or 3 times. But whatever works for you, Michael Phelps is to, before he swam, he used to have his headphones on. You just get into the zone. But I'm going to put you in a little bit slightly different position. You're doing the interview, and in the middle of it or between 2 interviews, you think, oh no, I've really messed up. What do you go to get yourself back on track? Matt, what do you go to get yourself back on track?
I think it is a really stressful situation, as we've said. That sort of thing is actually really likely. And I think you've got to, first of all, just stop yourself, because sometimes you see it when you're practicing that there's this tendency to want to almost keep talking, and you just tie yourselves up in more and more words, and sometimes then you say things you regret as well. So stop, take a moment, so pause. Different people sometimes have little techniques that can help with that. So, you're allowed to have a glass of water with you. Sometimes just pausing, taking a drink of water is just a way of breaking that cycle and giving yourself a moment. And then other people find sometimes just taking a purposeful breath equally helpful. Just be honest with the interviewers and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I'd like to correct that. Explain what you wish you had said, and then try and move on, because as you were alluding to earlier, Mr. Majumder, you don't want the baggage of anything that's happened before to affect the next part of the interview. One mistake, if you've picked it up and corrected it, you can absolutely recover from, but psychologically, if you let it, you can derail yourself. So that pause and taking a moment is really helpful.
Absolutely. The interviewers know, we've all been in that position. We've all been in your seats. We know people are nervous, and absolutely fine for people to be nervous and stop. As I keep telling people, you have a 5-minute interview. You just need to speak well for 3.5 minutes. You don't need to speak for 5 minutes. Winston Churchill famously once said, if you're ever in a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. Okay, so that's stopping, drinking water, doing your box breathing, whatever. Susie, what about you? What's your, oh no, I've just said something very silly. How do you get yourself back?
Take a second, breathe, and then just keep going. It's not over until it's over. So just keep going, and you never know. And that might not be you done and out. That's just a small blip. If it is something in the time that you can realize yourself that you've misspoke or missaid something, just be honest and be like, look, I'm really sorry, can I just restart that sentence? Or for me, having watched people go through interviews as well, I think just having that honesty and recognition that maybe you've said something incorrect or something, and just taking a second to be like, look, really sorry, can I just re-say that or something. But if it's after that station, you're going on to the next station, yeah, just take a breath and just think like it's not over until it's over. So just keep going and don't let it get you down.
I completely agree. My view is that if we use the analogy, or carrying with the analogy of the interviews being an exam, is I am not going to fail myself by carrying on thinking about something I had said that may not have been right. The failure has to be the responsibility of the interviewers. They have to do it. I'm not going to let myself do it. So I always crack on and absolutely correct. So fantastic. Just to tell you guys that from an interviewer's point of view, the other bit of prepping we get is essentially when you interview someone, would you like this person to be your registrar? And that's what you're looking for. So you're looking for someone who's trainable, someone who's honest, someone who fits those things as a colleague. So they're not looking for something amazingly bright, because all of you are very bright. There's no discussion about that. So that's what we asked to do. Matt, you were going to say something.
I think inevitably people take it very personally, because with anything like this, it feels like a very negative reflection upon yourself, and that can be really difficult to deal with. To add a bit of positivity though, I looked at all of the people that had been on some of the courses that we ran previously, and it's fair to say that almost every single one of those people that had done the courses ended up with a number within a few years. Now, that could be because it's the best course ever and that's helped all those people to get numbers, but I really don't think that's the case. I think it's just the reality that if you're a dedicated person who's willing to put the time and effort in and work on this, and this is something that you really want to do, you will get there eventually, and it can be really difficult if that's not straight away. I know excellent people who've applied 3, even 4 times before they got their number. But that's just because some people, I think, do unfortunately do better in interview scenarios. And if you get there in the end, it doesn't matter. So even if it doesn't happen immediately, if it's meant to be, if you're a hardworking individual and you're going to put the time there, you will get there eventually. And sometimes I do think people are better for having a little bit of extra time, honestly. But I think, yeah, in the long run, if it's meant to be, you'll get there.
Yeah, I don't think it's sometimes. When I got a number, I had got an LAT, and then I got my number, and I asked Simon Knight, who was an amazingly bright man and very clued in. And I said, boss, should I count my LAT year? And he said, don't be in a hurry to finish. And I remember, Susie, you perhaps don't remember this now that you're in your elevated status as Her Highness, the Madam President of PLASTA. But when you didn't get an interview, that you're one of our registrars, and I told you that the bad news is that you didn't get a number, but the good news is that you didn't get a number, which gave you a year to prepare. Because I think too many registrars, or some registrars, start their number and they're not quite ready to be a registrar, and they spend the first year or so struggling, and that year is already 1/6 of your training. So if you haven't got a number, use that time wisely so that when you do get a number, hopefully the next year, you hit the court running, so to speak, so you maximize your training time, right? So Susie, final word from you.
If you want this, just keep going. Work hard, study hard, and you will get there. It might just be a different route to what you envisioned, but you will get there. And it's excellent on the other side. It's a real privilege to be able to do this every day. So yeah, just keep swimming.
Thank you very much. Matt, any final words?
Just to add a bit of contrast, Mr. Majumder, to what you said to Susie. When I got my number, of course, you said to me was similar, but it was, congratulations, you've got a number, and now the clock is ticking. So I think you're right. Yeah.
Oh, the abuse I get from my trainees. Oh my God. Wonderful. Okay. Right. So thank you very much, guys. I hope this will be useful. We hope, don't be the three of us, it'll be useful to people. And Susie's already signposted you guys to stuff in PLASTA. Feel free to contact PLASTA. And there's a lot of resources out there, a lot of people out there, registrars, consultants, who are willing to help you. You just need to reach out. And obviously, you can contact us on PodPlast UK. So thank you very much for listening to PodPlast UK. I hope you guys found that useful. And goodbye. Say goodbye, guys.
Bye.
And goodbye.
Okay, Susie, you waved there. It's an audio podcast.
I know.
Oh, my God.
I realize.
So I am stopping recording, and goodbye.
PodPlast UK is a collaboration between UK and Irish plastic surgery trainees and consultants. The content reflects individuals' practice, and opinions may vary. If you have any feedback, do get in touch. We hope that this has been interesting and useful. If it has, remember to follow us for future sessions.